Welcome to the Night Shift Podcast. Jeff Sharon here, along with Eric Lopez and the student of the game, Kyle Nash. Wow, what a busy week we had. We are, and it just continued. Now, like the big stories are about, I feel like we kind of like, when you get through the spring football game, you kind of get over sort of a big speed bump on the way to the summer. Yes. And here we are, right? So we have that to talk about. We're going to start with the spring game. We'll also talk about baseball and using one John Rhys Plumlee as a bridge toward that, with him pulling off the double, playing in the baseball game and then moving over to football in the span of literally minutes on Friday night. So plus softball and plenty more to talk about later. But let's start with this spring game. All right. So, Kyle, you were there. We had about 17,000 fans for a Friday night, which was great. We had, what do you call it? We plenty more on top of that. You know, the offense looked pretty good. Format was, I think, a lot of fun. I think the Knights versus Knots thing was a hit.
Yeah.
But we'll start, and you actually wrote about it in your knee-jerk reactions, which you took, which you did for the spring game, in the stead of one Andrew Glukov.
Yes, I gently borrowed it with his permission.
Yeah. Well, it's nice. It's nice of you to actually treat him with politeness for once. But aside from that,
hey, listen.
Give me your first impressions of what we saw. The final quote score end quote was 43-42 in favor of who even was it? It was the Knots, right?
Yeah,
Knots.
So Knots, aka the offense.
The offense in versus the defense, and you know we had a half of football and then the skills competition. Give me your thoughts right away on the actual football that we saw, insofar as there was actual football being played.
Right. Yeah. No. So from the football perspective, you know, for the Knights, as opposed to the stuff that was not football. See what I did there? It was. If you're looking at the offense, you should be slightly encouraged. And I had some people texting me, "What happened to the offensive line? Do you feel like they had how many sacks? What did they give up? Ho. Breathe. Okay.
The second anyone got within 6 feet of a quarterback, the whistle got blown. It didn't account for escapability, even when JRP was out there.
I wasn't even going there to start with, but a great drop in for sure, Jeff. That's 100% accurate. I think there's at least 2, if not more, that should be taken off the board as far as sacks go, because escapability for both Thomas Castellanos and John Rhys Plumlee are a thing. By the way, if we're wanting to talk about speed, the term I like, Jeff, is from single to sideline, meaning the final single he hit in the baseball game was 7 minutes. Good God. Like, I can't cook dinner that fast, but I digress.
Not only that, I can't get dressed in 7 minutes. And he managed to, so.
That's a great point.
Well, our friend Noah Goldberg helped him by opening the door at the baseball dugout. Proud out to him.
Black and
well, I thought you were about to say that Noah Goldberg helped him get dressed. I'm like, no, he didn't.
He just helped him open the door to him to walk out of the baseball dugout to head over, get in the golf cart. So props to Noah helped in the 7 minutes.
Every second counts in this. I'm with that, gentlemen. No, but listen, we're talking a lot about JRP and quarterbacks and stuff. Let's start there too, right? The offensive line may have had some holes. We'll get to them in a minute, but going into the game, for me personally, the thing I was looking for was whether Tommy Castellanos was still a deer in the headlights. He was not. He looked comfortable. His footwork is definitely improved. There's still some work to be done. Obviously, there's still a long time between now and August, or late August, I should say, early September, when the season actually starts, where he can continue to get some more work. Darren Hinshaw, his mark is apparently made, because I heard him or I saw it, and then you hear him talking about it after the game. Shoulder placement, footwork being essential elements. Granted, when he would have just arrived last year, they may not even have been to that point to work to those fundamentals, rather because he's trying to learn the playbook and all of the above. But he looks very comfortable. There's chemistry that still needs to be had with him and Kobe Hudson and Javon Baker. That's clear. But the fact that he was able to hit a pretty long touchdown ball to, oh my gosh, I just lost his name.
Well, he hit one to Kobe Hudson, and then he hit another one to Javon. So
no, that's JRP. I'm talking about Tommy Castellanos.
Oh, Tommy Castellanos, yeah.
Yeah. He hit the number.
Deontay Marksy, I think.
Marks,
right?
that's it.
Yeah, that's who he hit. Yeah.
I'm like, no, that's not it. Deontay Marks. Thank you, Jeff. So yeah, no, from that standpoint though, and listen, I could see why you get it intermixed because it looked like JRP's footwork was better too, not for nothing throwing the football. But for Thomas Castellanos, the reason why it's so essential to evaluate him in my mind is because it is only a matter of time before JRP misses some games, or at least some significant time, needs rest, getting dinged up, because you and I both know his playing style, right? Or I mean, any UCF fan who follows it knows his playing style.
Well, that's where that's one place where I want to go, because I thought, from watching from where I was watching, and Eric, I'd like to know your input on this too. Even though you were at baseball, you were able to pick up on some of the things that were going on after the fact. You could tell, and you hinted at this, Kyle, that Darren Hinshaw's stamp was placed this spring because with the quarterbacks and how they behaved in the pocket. I felt that both TC and JRP and to an extent Timmy McClain were much more disciplined in their pocket presence. That being said, they were not afraid to move around when they had to. But, I thought that, and maybe it's a little bit of nitpicking on my part, but I thought that they were much more willing to step up in the pocket when the pressure started to come than panic and run around. Especially JRP, that enabled him to throw the 2 long touchdown passes late. And that I think is good to see, because that opens up that downfield attack that Darren was talking about in the preseason when he was hired. And I think it also shows that Gus Malzahn is like, hey, look, this is a real issue that we have to fix. We have to be a threat downfield.
Right.
And the quarterback unit has taken that and run with it. And I think that we saw that in the quarterback play. Now, granted, quarterback play is going to be scrutinized more than anything else in a spring game.
Well, but the thing I have to add, you mentioned the stepping into the pocket. That transitions nicely into a couple things. So first of all, 2 things then as a positive for the offensive line, right? What were the positions? What was the position in particular that I certainly, at least, if not the whole panel here on the Night Shift podcast, was concerned with? The tackles. No offense to our good friend Ryan Swoboda, but when the pressure on the outside is contained, a quarterback can step forward. That gives me 2 positives. One, you're holding off Ricky Barber, Lee Hunter, those guys at the defensive tackle spot, so they can step up. The interior line's doing their job. That's a plus. By the
Centers
way,
and guard, and Bullish Schmidt at center, coming in first year, I thought was solid.
No, Matt Lee was where I was going. You're absolutely right, buddy. So those things being in place, that's a good thing. The offensive line as a whole may not have been perfect, but damn it, that's an awful lot to ask with so few time together. You're 3 weeks into installing an offense with a new coordinator, a new set of guys up front. I thought they certainly looked at the low end good enough, if not potential for moving up to the point that I know Elo's going to eventually make. That is not certainly a test against a Power 5 defensive line yet. I understand that, but I'm seeing the right stuff in a spring game that I'd want to see from a unit that's bringing back 1 starter as a starter.
Wait a second. What are you talking about? They did play against the Power 5 front 5.
I see what you did there. Not
I saw Big 12. I saw Big 12 logos on the patches there in the jerseys.
I did too. I saw it on the field. It's all there.
It's not July 1st yet, but I like where you're going, and that's the right enthusiasm for the fans, gentlemen.
By the way, I want to state for the record. So I've never been to a spring game. I'm proud of that. I had a perfect record. However, I was willing to break that streak. I was willing to break the streak because I was doing baseball. They offered me a golf cart to get in there, and I said I would go into watch the spring game under one condition. And I called Bryson, and I asked him this question. I'm like, did our friend Kyle Nash step foot on the baseball stadium and watch a little, quote, stickball, as he likes to describe it. If he did that, I said, if he's willing to watch a pitch of baseball, I will go into the spring game. Bryson told me, no, you did not.
Oh, well, first of all, two things have happened here. A, you have broken a vow, and B, Bryson is wrong. I didn't step onto the pitch. I didn't step onto the field.
You can't even say it. Look at that.
No, but no, joking aside, I didn't step onto the diamond, but from behind the left field fence, I did observe a few pitches. Granted, I spent more time talking to my friends at the tailgate in question than I did watching the game, but I did watch a couple pitches of UCF baseball. So you're kind of out of luck on that one.
As a neutral arbiter, I have to allow it.
Well, I didn't get that information. I was misinformed.
Well, then you know what? You
know what though? It didn't matter because
you owe us a spring game next year.
Oh heck no, it ain't. But no, you know what's better than that? I got to stay outside as I'm walking. I got to hear the PA guy, which was phenomenal. He was clear, breaking it down. Wasn't that fantastic? And then Gus Malzahn emceeing. I mean, come on.
Kissing up to the arbiter. You heard that. You should double his penalty for bribery.
Working the refs. Great.
Seriously, it was like, wow, I could hear. I mean, heck, I could hear from baseball too, which was another story. But anyway,
JRP said something about that post game, like he was there in the baseball game, and he's hearing the start to go, and he's like, "Oh man, you know."
Well, you can hear it. It's the best.
Sorry, JRP.
Could be loud. Yeah,
didn't mean to scare you.
But you both make a good point about the mechanics of the quarterbacks, and I'm glad you brought up Thomas. Because I think regardless, I think we kind of agree, right? JRP is the heavy favorite to take the opening day. I think that's not a crazy prediction.
Oh, I'm going full Thanos. He is inevitable. Yes,
he's a starter. I think clearly, but I do think who's number 2 is just as important because I think the big question, Kyle, is can JRP last the season with his style of play? Maybe he stays in the pocket more. I think Hitchall's definitely an upgrade. He's going to help out with the quarterback. But I think that's good to hear about Thomas. I think that's valuable because I do think the number 2 quarterback spot is valuable because you just don't know how many snaps JRP has. Can he get a full year out of him? So I think that's encouraging. I'm encouraged if you're a Knight fan to hear that Thomas looks a lot different and a lot better than he did a year ago because you've been – I remember we talked about Thomas even last year. You were skeptical that he could contribute on the field, that he just wasn't ready. And unfortunately, you were correct as that was proven watching the American Conference Championship game, the biggest game of the year, when he had to make a cameo there. But that's very encouraging. Who else did you saw on the spring game that jumped out at you that either improved a lot or maybe just somebody that you just didn't know of, but you're like, whoa, that guy stands out. Keep an eye on him.
I mean, I'll dot a few other I's and cross a few other T's here too, real quick. I am very encouraged by the duo that is Baker and Hudson, right, at the receiver spot. I mean, obviously, we knew they were going to be the main targets, but to see what a difference a year makes, right? The chemistry with JRP and those guys. He comes in. Most of the scoring happened in the final 6.5 minutes of the spring game, where something else I was completely wrong about, by the way, JRP played more than one series. So there's that, and they did most of their scoring in the last 6.5 minutes ish. Tommy obviously hitting Deontay Marks in the earlier part. I'd say like the 3rd or 4th drive in, something like that. But as for me being impressed, I touched on the offensive line. Defensively, saying the interior line was good is kind of an expectation, so I don't want to go there. I have to say the linebacking core as a group did a little bit better than I thought. I think the secondary needs a little bit of work, but that's to be expected. They're young guys. The Henderson twins and those guys were all in there and they did their job. I think Damari was
Jakari actually got a lot of work. I thought he was pretty good back there.
Yeah, Jakari was good. I feel like
we saw that toward the end of last year too, I think, as well. So.
Right. I feel like that group is going to get more work, and Coach Malzahn said there were some injuries, so there were some other faces that were out there that were getting reps and all that stuff. All the things that you get from this allegedly unimportant game. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll go ahead and say that the linebacker core and the offensive lines were the most impressive things for me because everybody else is a known quantity. The running backs did good. Guys, there is a tradition of good running back rooms at UCF. I'm going to call it that now, right? Since I've been covering the team in 17, the running back room has always been awesome. And we haven't even had a, air quotes, run first coach until Malzahn in that time. So, Yeah.
Well, here were a couple of things a couple of things that stood out to me. Jordan McDonald stood out because even though I've seen him on a football field before, I don't know how that guy got bigger, but he seemed to have. Hand that guy the ball. He's going to be a problem on the, in between the tackles. I like that. DeMarcus Bowman. That dude's fast. and I'll tell you how so first of all, he was fast on the field in live action in the first half. Then they had the skills competition in the second half. And I was really curious about the fastest man competition because I knew that it was him, Johnny Richardson, and Deontay Marks. And all right, so I'm watching this and I saw the video afterwards, and I think the video got edited a little bit. Okay, and here's why. John, and I want to see if I can pull it up here too because I thought it was really interesting. Johnny Richardson got a bit of a jump. I think he anticipated Coach Malzahn saying go, so he was up like by a little by some amount, and DeMarcus Bowman caught him and actually won the thing at the line. And I'm going to see if I could pull it up here. But I was really, I was really impressed at how fast DeMarcus Bowman was. I thought that was a lot of fun to see. I'm actually going to pull it up here in a second to show everybody. But wow, I was really impressed with that. That's some serious speed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I asked RJ Harvey about the running back room being a tradition as it's become, and he hit the nail on the head. You got every skill set accounted for. You got every guy has some element of versatility. Sure, McDonald may not be the fastest, but he ain't exactly slow. Johnny Richardson may not be the biggest, but he'll knock somebody over if he has to. It's not his first choice, but yeah, it's amazing to watch these guys.
Can we break this down for just a second? I just want to show this. All right. DeMarcus Bowman's up at the top. Johnny Richardson's at the top. All right. Or in the middle. Now, I'm going to unmute this. Watch. Johnny is okay. You see this? Johnny's looking at Coach and smiling.
I see it.
Okay. You can see him smiling. All right. Now, what? Okay. Watch this. Did you see that jump?
Yeah, he did get a little bit. It didn't look like Bowman was even fully in his stance.
I know. DeMarcus got a late start. Look, you can see it right here. His hand's still on the ground. Johnny's out.
Yeah. Frame by frame analysis here.
Yeah, that's how we do it here on the Night Shift Podcast. Now, watch DeMarcus Bowman catch up. He's late.
He's back about what?
Johnny's up by a full yard.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It is. Yeah.
After the first 10. See that?
Yeah.
Now watch. Right about here. He's got him. Last 15 yards, he caught him.
Woo.
That's
Deontay Marks is
That's some speed. And you're right. Let's give it up to Deontay here because he's back by 2 yards and he almost catches him.
The gap on both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Right there.
He is a receiver. That's his job, is to do it down the field like that. But yeah, listen, by the way, if that's the problem you have, that your receiver only almost caught up to the running backs down the stretch, good problems to have, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So the other part we wanted to get into here, and Elo was a part of this, and we get to actually hear Elo's voice a little bit even more on this, is John Rhys Plumlee, of course, like we mentioned from before, moving over. 2 hits at baseball, 2 key hits in the baseball game, and then hopping in the golf cart, getting over to the spring game in order to get some reps in the spring game. So let's pull this up, and I want to, and we'll hear Eric over at the baseball game break this on down here as right after JRP had his second hit of the game, which was a single. Here we go.
And score that run for third.
He says, no, I'm going to swing away and drill it deep. That will drop it. Coming in to score is Farrow. Coming in to score is Russo. Sliding into third with a 2 RBI triple for John Rhys Plumlee. Plumlee with a base hit to right field. Russo will stay at second. Plumlee has his second hit of the game. And the Knights continue to hit. Yeah, this never see this ever again. An athlete like John Rhys Plumlee and what he's doing. He's racing, and that camera person's going to follow him. Good luck. Andrew Braid at the plate. Meanwhile, look at that. And the fans notice this, too. This is amazing. The fans are all watching him, and they're rooting him on. And look right there. Moments ago, John Rhys Plumlee live right now with the football pads on. The jersey has just arrived at the bounce house with his jersey on, getting ready to participate in the spring game. Look at him pumping up the crowd after coming over from John Liano Park, where he had 2 hits, 2 RBIs.
There you go.
Yeah, running past the Citronaut from single to sideline, 7 minutes. By the way, 10 minutes after the single, he's hitting Kobe Hudson for the 70-yard pass. I mean, goodness gracious. You know it's an accomplishment when it inspires Eric Lopez to write an awesome column. blackandgoldbanner.com.
Thank you. Thanks for the
And
plug.
care about a spring football game.
There you go. I figured Kyle could take care of the spring part, the football portion of the evening there, right? I mean, that was fun. Well, let me ask you this, Kyle, because I'm really interested, because you were in the press box when all this was unfolding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take me through the press box. I'm calling the game with Steven Branco. And this is a full disclosure. We were told before the game that John Rhys Plumlee there was no agreement. In other words, and I want to make this clear, him leaving that game early was not prearranged. It just was organic. And that's what I really enjoyed about it. Because we were told before the game, his intentions is to play the whole game. If it's a close game, he's playing the whole game. There is no chicanery. There's no like side deals here. So
Here's Eric thinking he's right. He'll never play the spring game. Ha, 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 ha.
Well, what's funny, remember, there was a 25-minute delay, lightning delay.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, my goodness, he's kind of hosed here. I don't think this is going to work out. I thought it was tight to begin with in the normal schedule. So he has the triple, which was unbelievable. He gets a 2 RBI triple to get the lead. They get the big lead, and now you're optimistic. You're thinking it's playing itself out. And he gets the bait. And I remember in the 7th inning, our crew, we noticed that he was talking to Greg Lovelady.
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh, this could be it. So let's monitor this. Well, any baseball player, I don't care. You don't have to be a baseball fan to know. No baseball player is ever going to give up an at-bat. Okay?
Nor should they, frankly.
So we knew, he kind of had a good feeling he was going to hit in that inning. But we didn't know what was going to happen after. He gets a base hit to right field for his second hit. Then they pinch run for him. And it was kind of wild to see him getting the high five from his teammates across the board.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, hey, nice high five. It was like, yeah, let's go get him. And credit to Greg. Greg and John, they talked about it, took him out. And UCF had a big lead. The game was in hand. And he's racing. I joke about Noah because Noah opens the door and the dugout, which is my favorite part. But he's racing, and the kids, as Jeff mentioned, are waving high five, and that's what it's all about. I'm thinking, I got goosebumps. And you know me, I don't like the spring game. I think it's whatever. But I think the fact that this guy's about to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, there was something pretty cool about that, Kyle. What was it like in the press box as this is unfolding? Are you guys aware of this? Are you following what is the buzz in the box? And then obviously you see him walk out 7 minutes later, which we actually carried on the broadcast, which I kind of was amusing. We did carry his walking in there, but what was it like in the press box?
Yeah, so you mentioned all the stuff there too. I'm forced to add in after the game, John Rhys mentioned having that conversation with Coach Lovelady. It was a plan to be flexible situation, but to his credit, the 2 RBI triple sets the table for all of that. I can't stress that enough to like, hey, who in the same day has had a 2 RBI triple tough enough to do in baseball. And then, oh, by the way, when they hit a 70-yard pass in a spring game afterward, that in itself is crazy. That sets the table for all of this to even be possible. He was the first scoring for the beatdown that would incur. But within the confines of the press box, it was kind of a lull. The offense had been kind of sputtering. Wasn't a whole lot that they were doing. To be honest, the atmosphere in the stadium in general was kind of flat. And then JRP comes out. There's a lift, and I believe it was shortly after that. I may have my timeline a little off. I don't remember precisely. Was the Deontay Marks touchdown, and then here comes JRP. So that was certainly a lift the crowd was hoping to get. And in the press box, you could hear people going, okay, well, it's the 7th inning. He's just hit. Oh, he just got a pitch runner. He's on his way, Yeah. So they're all chirping about that. And like, it didn't seem like a whole lot of time because it wasn't before you see him trotting out on the field and pumping the crowd up, man. So no, it was definitely a sight to behold. And I had to ask him after the game, if you hadn't seen the reel yet, out there on the socials, I could go banner at Instagram and Facebook, by the way, and on Twitter. But this is something he's going to be talking about for what, like, this is going to be a top 10 day in his life, at the very least, not just as an athlete, but as a dude, So
as he should, by the way. That's not something that just happens every day.
By the way,
we just saw witness that.
And Eric, you brought it up. This caught the attention of Deion Sanders. This caught the attention of Kyler Murray.
Correct.
A couple other two sport guys who mentioned about this in social media. Officially, the line for JRP on the night: 2 for 3 with a triple and a single, a run scored, 2 runs batted in, and he was also hit by a pitch. That was the first hit he took on the night. Actually, I should say that's the only hit he took on the night. And then in the football game, 10 of 17 for 236, 2 touchdowns, including a 70-yarder to Kobe Hudson. Drew is in here too, Andrew Glukov, and we get the chance to talk about sort of the history of this with JRP. And Eric, you wrote the column on the site on Black and Gold Banner that you thought that JRP is kind of, in your opinion, has cemented himself as the top 2-sport athlete in UCF history. And we've had a few. Obviously, D. Brown, I think, is the first one that comes to mind, who had, at least a prominent role. Great baseball player. Had a prominent role as a football player, too, behind Alex Haynes. For a while there, it was him and Alex Haynes were kind of a two-headed monster in the backfield. But D did not play football his final year. JRP is going to. But you made the point that JRP is a quarterback.
Correct. He's a quarterback. Starting quarterback and he is also a starting center fielder, playing both at a high level. D. Brown was a back, played some, but let's be real, he was a fullback, which is kind of an outdated position now.
They didn't really use him as a fullback though in Kruzak's offense. He was listed as a fullback, but he was really a tailback. I mean, the way
either way, it wasn't used as much. He wasn't a starter that was depended on. Like, I think that's the consensus. And I think what impresses me about this, and why this is impressive, because there's been others. There's, if you go, I wrote in the column, there's a Calvin Lickenbach back in the 70s who played basketball and baseball. Credit to Mark Daniels, who mentioned this on his radio show. I did not have this listing because I didn't know about it. There's a young player by the name of Eric Riggs, who was on the basketball team in '96 NCAA tournament team that played baseball and played in the minors. Among their, Allie Allman, former goalkeeper, Amy Griffin, I should say, played soccer, was an All-American goalkeeper, had rowing and as well. She did rowing. She did cross country. So we've had some 2-sport people. Darren Henshaw, as a matter of fact, was on the '94 basketball team. Had a cup of coffee there.
Although, didn't have a significant Darren, role. He played 9 minutes.
Correct. But that's my point.
In 5 games.
My
he had
point
one
is,
basket.
Correct. But my point is what JRP is doing is more remarkable than anybody's ever done at UCF. Because, Kyle, you and I have debated on this podcast, I remember, months ago, about the importance of him being at spring practice. And you talked about he has to be at practice. He has to have the rapport with the players.
Well, certainly thought so, right.
And I said, no, he can't miss baseball for practice. He has to be at baseball. He's a starting center fielder. Well, what John Rhys Plumlee basically told us is he told both of us to shut the bleep up because I'm going to do both at the same time.
He
missed one practice this spring. One.
Take a hike, nerds.
He's like, silence, plebeians.
Yeah. He missed one practice. He literally did a practice scrimmage and then flew to Greenville to play a doubleheader the same day. It's the most insane thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Go ahead, Elo. Wrap it up.
I think this is the UCF equivalent of Dion, though, playing like a football game and then playing in the World Series at the same night.
Yeah, except Bobby Cox didn't have a bitter feeling about it because Dion played football and benched him, which was idiotic. Yeah. This is insane. It's the most insane thing ever, guys. I'm blown away. I never in my wildest dream imagined that he would go through this entire spring only missing one football practice and no baseball games. That blows me away, Kyle.
Since he's an expert on it and he's here now, I have to ask Drew. Is this the best trolling you've seen from a guy who's his Knights? Is John Rhys Plumlee?
It's like killing with kindness. You control with honey as well as vinegar.
It's absolutely infuriating, isn't it? It's Drew, I wanted to get your take here on the Knights versus Knots format, which I think is just tailor-made now for spring games. I think that's just going to be what we're going to do from now on. Mm-hmm. The defense came out in the night mode stuff.
Looked awesome.
The offense was in the space game jerseys from 19, 20, and 21, depending on who was on what position you were in. I think the quarterbacks were in the grays, which, by the way, are my personal favorite space game jerseys. But I think that all worked out. The one little debut that I liked and I shared was that Knott's end zone with the Polaris star on the left hand side. I kind of dig that. Kyle,
here's the problem.
I liked it.
Here's the problem, and the problem was you. You were the problem.
It's you. Hi, you're the problem.
It's you. And it made not sound like you were trying to say Knights, but congested. And as you admitted, you later actually were a little congested. So the problem with it is you. You're the issue.
Oh, wow. Is that a Taylor Swift reference, or do you really mean that?
No, well, no, the truth was when I heard the clips.
Look, it was the Knots who scored. Like,
I mean, I couldn't tell if he was like.
In theory, the defense could have scored. Okay, in my
wanted garlic knots.
Listen, if I may be permitted to defend myself in the court of law here,
no,
you can always try.
It just wasn't outside the realm of possibility that the Knights could score a touchdown. That would have been the defense scoring a touchdown. They did force 2 turnovers. Mm-hmm. All right. So one has to be clear about which side is scoring points. So Knots. Yeah, I grant you. It was out of the tradition because it's touchdown UCF, right? I mean, that's
true.
So it is going to sound a little outside. The other thing was, Knott's first down, which was,
Did you say that the Knights recovered the ball?
Yes.
Hold your nose.
It's consistency.
Jeff, hold your nose.
One must be consistent. One must be consistent and accurate with the information when placed in that position. So I was. Just because you didn't like it doesn't mean that,
Hey, listen, overall, truth be told, Knights and Knots in spring game, I love it. I do. The use of the Citronaut as an alternate logo, I got no problem with it. It's when we start with the power.
I look forward to not being there next year and not following it as well. But listen,
Kyle
didn't step in he was in the outfield, it's not inside the baseball stadium. I've made a ruling.
You said watch a pitch. That's what you said.
You said you were talking to somebody else. You didn't pay attention.
I did watch some pitches.
Who pitched? Who was the pitcher?
I don't know.
You think he knows names? He barely tries to.
That wasn't one of the conditions, Eric. No.
Stop moving the goalposts.
Which, by the way,
Plumlee was there. That's all he has to know.
This is only a problem because of bad reporting by our own Bryson Turner.
Well, that's true.
No, he's not wrong. Now we're flaming Bryson on this?
That's great.
God.
How about this? I'll do it next year, but I want to be on the golf cart next to JRP if he does it again. How about that?
That would be
You
tight
can
if he
hold the
comes
door
back, but you
open
can't.
like
How
Noah
cool.
did.
Noah, that's what I said earlier. Noah's the unsung hero here. He
you can hold
saved
the
him a
door open.
second and a half by opening the door for him.
Not only that, but I mean, Noah was in a very important position. Like, if he doesn't do that right, I mean, there's a sprained ankle. I mean, that's the end of the night.
He'd be the next scapegoat.
Yeah.
And
maybe he's gonna not take his the whatever internship or whatever he's gonna do, and he's gonna get another job at UCF being the door guy.
Ooh, the door guy.
I mean, that is
how much would you have tipped them? How much would you have tipped them?
At least 20.
I also buy him some coffee.
Now we're violating NCAA rules. Okay, great. All right, so let's use this.
Let me ask you this.
I'm going to sign him to an NIL deal that buys him a cup of coffee.
There you go.
Let me ask you this. Would you at least agree to this, Kyle? All right, spring football is the most important thing. I'm giving you a hard time. But would you guys agree with this? JRP made this spring game memorable, right? Like, it's hard to remember what happened in a spring game 3 years ago, but people are going to remember this day years from now as, hey, I remember that. That was when JRP played baseball and then played the spring game. Right. I think that's the added value that was really worked out.
Like, you and I will remember that Dylan Gabriel was born in a spring game. You and I will remember that Greg McCrae was born in a spring game. Fans will remember that JRP did this 100%. I'll even add this, and I mean, no offense to my Duke of the Diamond up here, but him bringing some positive headlines to UCF athletics baseball as well is a good thing right now.
I agree 100%.
Rough athletic year. This has been a
tough year. Yeah, it's a tough year. By the way, feel free, local media, feel free to get out of your seats and, cover this guy. Just saying, I know you're busy covering who the Magic are going to blow with the next NBA lottery pick. You're writing columns about trying to move the Tampa Bay Rays to Orlando.
They're not moving to Orlando.
Exactly. Spoiler.
That's fine.
Now, for the record, I did see JRP the next morning. He was flying by in his scooter as people were waiting to go into the stadium for the yard sale. And he's like, "Morning, y'all," just as he's flying by.
You laugh about that, but it's crazy how much energy this guy has.
The guy is like, he reminds me a little bit of Hines Ward in the fact that he's always smiling.
Yep.
Hines Ward was playing chess, and he would get in your head because he never stopped smiling.
Yeah, Hines Ward was absolutely infuriating.
Is that?
He did it. He beat you. He beat you badly.
You could hit him, and he could be. I mean, you could hit him so hard that he would require an amputation, and he would just be taking it in stride and smiling.
And he'd smile about it. JRP just
can't break that guy.
Cheerful guy. I mean,
can't break him.
But pick up the infectious energy.
Drew, I told the story earlier about how he did a practice scrimmage, flew to Greenville to play in a doubleheader baseball. Right. I was told the next morning the guy was full energy, more energy than the other guys. You would think the guy, you wouldn't even know that he played. It's remarkable what he does. I hope people appreciate what he's doing. Is he the greatest quarterback ever in program history? No. Is he the best baseball player in program history? No. But this guy, what he's doing above and beyond has been remarkable. I hope people appreciate that and respect what he's doing, because this is not an everyday occurrence. Kyler Murray had the great tweet, Kyle. Do it as long as you can, because at some point they don't let you do it. And I wish some of the local media would have covered this.
There's some real wistfulness from Kyler Murray in that tweet, by the way. Did you notice that?
Oh, sure.
If I played for the Arizona Cardinals, I would wish I would be playing baseball too.
It kind of felt like he was saying, "I wish I was playing baseball right now."
He wouldn't be making this kind of money. That's a whole
shoot, Kyler.
He'd be away from the Bidwells in Arizona.
Oh man, what a dumpster fire that franchise is right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's transition over to the Diamond Sports, which means Kyle is going to be like, no, I'll sit this one out. But no,
he can break down the pitches he saw from the outfield. I mean,
he can talk about the 3 pitches that he saw thrown.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the
awesome single where they legged out the throw and beat it out just in time. It was great.
Well, after the slide that UCF went on after the Dartmouth series, they've now won in the past week 4 out of 5, including a comeback victory, 2 out of 3 over Memphis in the conference series over the weekend, and 2 against Stetson in midweeks, including a 7-6 victory on Tuesday night. We're recording this on Wednesday, by the way. And in a game that was back and forth, UCF jumped out 3-0. Stetson scored 6 unanswered to take a 6-3 lead in the 7th. And then UCF got a 2 in the 8th on a home run by Faro. And then plated a pair in the 9th, including a walk-off walk by Tommy Jostin to win it. So as we check baseball right now, Eric Lopez, which you have been following not nearly as close as softball, but of course have been following it nonetheless, 21-16, 3-6 in conference, with a conference series coming up this weekend at South Florida in Tampa. That won't be easy. As we look at the RPI here, as we are wont to do, UCF right now at 119, moved up 5 spots, but still nowhere near where they want to be. Houston at 109. We're looking at, I want to see where South Florida is, but
you got to win the conference tournament to make the NCAA. It's fairly simple.
That's it. That's where you're at right now.
Which is wild, Jeff. You know what's wild about this, Jeff? You and I have covered this league in baseball for 10 years. You've actually called games for the conference tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, you and I talked about how this league was the top 5 league in college baseball. And and was arguably the best sport that the conference had overall, top to bottom. They're 13th this year in college baseball. It's been amazing to see this league struggle in baseball this year. Houston struggled non-conference. Tulane has fallen off a cliff. They must have traded their baseball program for the success of football. Their baseball program's in the toilet.
South Florida, by the way, 126th RPI, 5 spots.
They're mediocre
UCF,
too, but
spots, I should say.
Well, maybe if their coach would stop quoting proverbs on Twitter, maybe, and focus on his baseball team, they have more success. Oh, there's shots fired, folks. Don't worry, we'll get more of that. But that's what's kind of crazy about this is this league has hurt everybody. It's kind of wild. Like normally, if you picked up great wins in the league, you're doing fine, but not this year. So anyway, that's a side story. To me, an underrated story that how baseball's fallen off a cliff in the American. But from that standpoint, go ahead, Drew. You had thoughts on that.
There's, we also have to keep in mind, there was a cloud hanging over this team for a while. And I remember last week's show, I mentioned, you get the news out, you get a statement out there, you take the weight off the player's shoulders. That was before the Memphis series. 3-1 since. I don't think it's coincidence.
Agree 100% with you.
4-1 since.
Oh, 4-1, yeah, because they had the other midweek with Stetson. I don't think that's coincidence. I think it makes perfect sense. These are kids. That weighs on them. That one of their own kind of threw them under the bus and tried to get them in a lot of trouble, caused an internal investigation that affected everybody. Well, they came out, they said, we're done with it. We have our conclusion. And you know what? The slate's clean. And now the boys are just playing the game. And you're seeing it. Right. You're seeing what this team is actually meant to do. And so, while the damage is done from a grand perspective from the season, the RPI is not going to recover enough to get an at-large. These guys are starting to have fun again, and it's showing on the field. And I think that's what matters at this point.
1,000% agree with you on your point on that. I think it's dead on. Sometimes things like that, wasn't planned. However it came out, whatever, all that's been addressed already and said. Sometimes things like that turns a season around, and I agree with you. I think they're playing much better, much looser. I think this team has a run in them. You hope it's at the right time, i.e. Clearwater, Florida, come May. But they're finding some answers. I think they found some answers offensively. They looks like Cole Russo at second base, moving Jostin to right field has solved some things because they have not gotten production out of right field. There's still some questions with the pitching, though. Cam Leiter started the Tuesday night game against Stetson, only went 3 innings because Greg Lovelady said in the postgame he might start Sunday in this series against South Florida because each series is big. You want to build that momentum. So it's about winning games, feeling good. They got to still square some things in the rotation. Rudy Gomez is your clear Friday night guy. I think they're still trying to figure out Saturday, Sunday, what's the right approach with that and try to be more consistent. But I agree with you, Drew. I actually think in a bizarre way, I know it was an uncomfortable week last week with how everything played out, but I do think this could work in the long term as a positive on the field.
Well, a couple things on that, too. I mean, and we saw this last night, prior to the rally, Ben McCabe and Andrew Sundin are the top 2 hitters in the American right now. And as of last night, there was a point right before the rally where they were 7 of 8 combined, and the rest of the lineup was 1 for 20. The rest of the lineup stepped up in those final 2 frames and pulled UCF back over the top. But, I toss it over to Drew on this. Can they get the pitching, just solidified just enough right now? Because, they're not out of reach here. I mean, they're 3-6 in the conference, but the conference, like you're saying, Eric, it's, because it's not that great, it's actually pretty tight. ECU 7-2, in the league. And then you have Houston at 6-3, Wichita, South Florida 5-4, Tulane 4-5. We're still in a position in the season where that can flip real quick.
Takes
right?
one series, one weekend series. That's all it takes to flip that on its head. There's still a lot of games left. I mean, UCF still has one, two.
Well, that's the thing, Drew.
Five different series left to go in the season.
Yeah.
And so that can change. That's 15 games right there. So then there's a lot of play. Houston's one of the series you were talking about them. It's expected that ECU is going to ride number one.
They're the team to beat. They're the team to beat.
But you get in that conference tournament, one game's all it takes.
Yeah.
Between moving and going home.
And they're third. They're as a team, UCF right now 3rd in the league in hitting. ECU is leading the conference in hitting, 4th in the league in team ERA. ECU's 1st in that. And by the way, looking at the team ERAs, none of them are all that great of shakes right now.
Just based on that, Jeff,
but
they don't fit where they are in the standings, and I think that's because the mental aspect of the scrutiny the team was under was playing a role.
So you're predicting some regression to the mean here, is what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. I expect UCF to continue to elevate. Remember, before things went bad, the hitting was good because remember, it wasn't a widespread problem. It was an isolated issue. So before the scrutiny of it came, they were flying, they were scoring, they were playing well. So we're starting to see that coming back. We're seeing the offense starting to put more runs out. 8 runs last time, or 8 against Memphis, 12 against Memphis, and then they had the walk-off last night in dramatic fashion with a literal walk-off. But they're putting runs back on as opposed to getting 1 or 2. That's the mental focus.
Yeah.
And you were talking about whether the pitching can recover. Pitching, I think, is a little more impacted by the mental aspect because you're by yourself out there, and it's very easy to have an errant throw or it doesn't break or something like that. I think we're seeing the result of the mental fortitude being restored to this team.
Well, part of it, though, they got to get some more consistency out of the bullpen. Greg Lovelady always depends on that bullpen. Get that bridge to Kyle Kramer, their closer. Mm-hmm. The Saturday, Sunday starting, Dom Stagliano. You've got, Jacob Marlowe, who steps up that guy. By the way, let's not wear Citronauts on Saturday. We've talked about it. They don't win. They don't win with those jerseys, okay? But first of all, they don't look great. All right, they look like the Kansas City Royals, and that's not a team I want to look like. They
don't even look like the Kansas City Royals. They look like Royal rejects. I mean, it looks absolutely awful. Just take those things.
Just change it up. Just because you're superstitious, just change it for one day. See what happens.
I love collecting jerseys. I don't want that one.
I know. If you don't want that, then that's a bold statement there.
I wanted to make one quick point before we move to softball, Eric, and you were talking about, again, how wide open the American is, at least as of right now. But when we took the national perspective, Houston, when we look at the RPI, Houston, top AAC team, they're at 9th right now. We know who the next AAC team is in the RPI?
Who is it?
Houston. 100 spots back.
Of East Carolina.
Yeah. At 109.
It's shocking, Jeff, and it kind of blows me away because this league used to have 4 or 5 teams in the top 50 every year, and you would pick up quality wins in the resume. That is not the case this year.
I don't know.
I guess he's just picking a good time to leave.
Yes, they are in every sport.
Well, you know what? That piques my interest here, Drew, because number 1 team in the Big 12 in RPI is Texas at number 19,
Yeah.
followed by West Virginia, 31, Oklahoma State, 32, TCU, 50. So there's 4 top 50 teams right there. So
and they don't have teams in the 200s like they do in the American in the sports there. But we'll see. UCF at USF this weekend, Drew. I don't know what you had planned, but they're in your backyard there, near your backyard anyway, in Tampa. It'll be a little.
My wife is dragging me. Her mother is coming up. And
don't blame her.
I'm being dragged to Dinosaur World.
You should say I'm honored to go to Dinosaur World.
That's what she wants to do.
It's so. My
you
wife,
step up and take her somewhere nice.
It's not my idea.
By the way, so
the story. Well, her brother likes going there.
Oh.
They're Irish twins, so it's right in the middle of their 2 birthdays. Today's my wife's birthday. His is next week, so it's the middle point. So he's coming from Orlando. Her mother's driving up, and we're going to meet them at Dinosaur World. I'm going along. Here's the worst part: they decide to all buy dinosaur-related shirts to wear at Dinosaur World, and I'm being dragged into having to do this as well.
All right. Well, you know what?
All right,
we've all been there. You do what you have to do.
All right. So UCF
I'd rather go watch baseball.
Go ahead, Eric.
Right. UCF USF final scheduled meeting. As conference mates. Same thing with softball.
Right.
This is it. This is the last weekend there.
Yeah.
USF won 2 out of
Friday,
3.
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah. The baseball coach who likes to do quote proverbs when people are facing adversity, other people's adversity. I will just read you this proverb 22:24. Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered. In other words, hey, go enjoy playing Charlotte and North Texas in a 3-game series next year.
But Eric was easily agitated when he had to see FCS schools on UCF.
Like, why are you?
Eric climbs into the back seat of the Rolls Royce, laughing, holding the button.
Like, don't tweet it. Yeah. So there you go. Enjoy it. My goodness,
Fantastic.
Lord. And you people want to keep playing these clowns.
Depends on the sport.
Which I'm actually writing a column about, right? At blackandgoldbanner.com. Which sports should play each other still? Which should not? Very good.
Right.
Thank you for the segue, Jeff.
Now, if it's up to Jeff, it'd be every sport. Every sport.
I have a little nostalgia on that. I'm not going to lie. All right. I'm on the record on that, by the way. All right. So let's flip over to softball here, Eric, because they're at 27-19, 6-3 in the conference. And the clock is ticking on this season all of a sudden. They have just 3 series left, including this coming weekend, 3 against South Florida. Now, they went out to Tulsa, out in the phone booth, and won 2 out of 3. The only one they lost was on a walk-off. But this is a big stretch. They have their last 6 home games coming up the next 2 weekends. South Florida, Houston. Then they finish up at Memphis, which, we can talk about at Memphis all we want. But all right. So catch us up here on what's on where they are. Do you feel like they are where they need to be? I know you're going to say they're not where they want to be. Where they need to be, though? I mean, they're
in the 30s. I mean, they were 34 RPI as of Monday. I think they're 38 as of Wednesday. It's very fluid, but they're in the 30s, which is a good spot to be. To make the NCAAs as an at-large. But, you mentioned the Tulsa series. Of course, we're going to lose on a walk-off to Tulsa where we lose a lead in the bottom of the 7th because it's freaking Tulsa. My goodness almighty. We had to get
I will not miss Tulsa.
Nobody will. I don't care if it's love it.
There's a team I don't want to play again.
They won't. Anybody that schedules Tulsa needs to really have their head examined. I will say it did feel good to run roll them 13-1 in 5 innings. That felt like they took out a lot of football, basketball frustrations by rolling them Tulsa. But you mentioned South Florida. It's a big series here. UCF's in the 30s. South Florida is 56 in the RPI. It's a big series for both sides. Conference standings, resume standpoint. I think UCF has to win out as far as winning all the series. Because you mentioned Memphis. The problem with Memphis, their RPI is in the 240s. Even if you win, and this is the flaw with the RPI, you could win 100-0 in those 3 games, and you're going to drop in the RPI.
Yeah, so that's 236 right now. Yikes.
Yeah, it's atrocious. You're not going to get that in the Big 12.
And the bracketology is gonna impact that.
Absolutely, because you're going to drop in the RPI just by playing that game. Like I'm not joking. They would be better off, and this is the flaw in the system. You're better off having that series being rained out than playing it and winning it. I'm telling you, I'm not even making that up. No, it's a flaw because it hurts your schedule strength. It's just a lot of metrics. It's a stupid thing. That's why basketball got rid of this system of the RPI. So they actually would be better off if it's raining all weekend in Memphis. Don't put the tarp on Memphis, please. Just let the field go. So, but with that in mind, they have to win this series against USF. They got to win the series against Houston after that. You know, their offense, Shannon Doherty had a monster week. She's back to her old self. She leads the team in homers. She's 1 RBI behind. That's huge for this team. They need her to be at a high level. She has been in a different level since she won. She was announced as the recipient of the Order of Pegasus. So she's doing good. Sarah Willis is throwing well. Grace Jewell's doing better. But they don't have a lot of room for error. You can't have too many more slip-ups. I do have some good news because people have been asking me about this. I just got a message. Look for Jada Cody to be back in the lineup this weekend. She had an undisclosed injury, but she should be 100% ready to go this weekend for South Florida. So that's very good news because they were without her for the last 4 games due to this injury. And that's the other thing. This team has had injuries. To her, Ashley Griffin hasn't played all year. They're starting catcher, which we have kind of underreported. So they've not only had a new pitching staff, but they've had young catchers. And I think that's kind of hurt slowed the development a little bit and why they've had some of the results they've had. But it is what it is. That's in the rearview mirror. They're going to play a South Florida game. It's always big when these two teams play. And both teams need this series to and help their at-large cases. Otherwise, the conference tournament is going to be a must-win in Tampa in a month.
And here's the story in the standings. Wichita at 10-2, and they have 6 games left in the
They just beat Oklahoma State, too, on Tuesday night, so they're really good.
They handle Oklahoma State, too. 3 of those games are against ECU, and the other 3, I think, are against
they're in great shape to win the regular season. I would be
stunned if they play ECU and then look at that, Eric, at Tulsa.
Yeah, that's
Let's root for the Golden Hurricane.
You have no choice. Yeah.
But UCF, Houston, South Florida all tied at second at 6-3. So, you've got 6 games at home against the 2 teams you are tied with in the standings, like you were saying. And chance to put South Florida away once and for all.
At least for an at-large, they would still obviously be a legit threat to win the conference tournament.
Yeah.
And that's going to be interesting what's going to happen with that rivalry because I've talked to both head coaches. And one of the challenges that these coaches are going to have in scheduling each other is the Americans going larger. They're going to be at 10 teams, I believe, next year with the additions of Charlotte, North Texas, FAU, among other schools.
Yeah, so their regular season is going to get expanded by 1 week where it normally is, and then some on the front end.
Correct. UCF's going to the Big 12, which is going to be a 10-bid league. So you're losing multiple weeks in your schedule that both coaches admit have to adjust to because that's how do you make that up in home games? How do you make that up from a date standpoint? Can you find the common dates that work? I expect these 2 teams to continue to play, but it is going to be a challenge next year as both teams adjust to these new schedules. And I think I speak for a lot of the coaches that keep that in mind. We always face like they should, the columnists want to write, they should play. It's not that simple. Like, you don't just write it on a date and say, we're good. Like, there is a lot of logistics that have to be done to make this happen. I do think they'll play. The other thing is with these 2 teams usually being in the NCAA tournament, let's be real, they're probably going to see each other in the NCAA tournament, which, by the way, softball is the only sport, marquee sport, with apologies to tennis, golf, whatever, that they have played each other in the postseason in the NCAA tournament.
So let me ask you, Eric. College Sports Madness's bracketology right now has UCF as the first one out.
Why are you reading him? Read Extra Innings Softball. They have a bracket. What are you doing?
Great. See, I was about to get to that. Where do you have it? Because we know.
Where did College Sports Madness have it?
Let's talk to someone who actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to
amused now. I didn't see this. So where did College Sports Madness have them? I'm just curious.
First one out.
Who?
UCF.
Oh, that's laughable. I don't even want to know who you had in. But anyway, I have UCF in. They're a 3 seed. Tallahassee is the likely place against an SEC team. Could be Florida if they're not hosting, which, that'd be a big story. Or Auburn. if Florida hosts, UCF is also in the mix there to be a 3 seed. I actually have UCF this week as a 3 in Gainesville against Oregon. But I will say this. If you lose 2-3 games, if you lose this series, yeah, you're probably on the outside looking in. So the margin for error is not huge from that standpoint for UCF. Because, again, this conference, when you play the bottom teams in the American, it hurts your resume more than it helps, which is why, man, I'll be glad next year when we're playing the Big 12 and we have a lot of room for error. And I'm going to tell people, don't freak out because we lost, a series to Oklahoma State or Texas, for example.
So let's go behind the curtain a little bit on that. When you do your bracketology, do you go based on the RPI today, or do you project based on
I got
to be facing some low ranked teams? Do you take that into your consideration beforehand because the game's going to be played?
No, I use the information that I have in front of me, and I use the metrics that the committee has. Full cheap pop here. I'm actually going to record after this episode. I'm going to record an interview with the committee chairperson from the softball committee. I guarantee a College Sports Madness ain't talking to the committee chairperson. So I will. I know
their bracketology free. I could get it.
Well, sorry though, but I got to. Somebody's got to make it.
I'm poor. I just bought jerseys.
I don't make those decisions. That's above my pay rates there. But so what I'd say is I know the metrics that they have and things like that, but I can't look ahead because you don't know. Upsets could happen, and it could change everything completely. So you just go week by week. That's why I update it every week and see how it plays out, and then update it. But things like schedule strength, top 25 RPI wins, top 50 quad 2 wins. These are all still very important that people can relate to, and it's very fluid this year because there's so many upsets in college softball. So it's a much trickier job. But I have UCF in right now. In fact, I have UCF in right now as the only non-Power 5 school in, which is a whole other story, how the Power 5 is quietly separating themselves from the group of 5 in a lot of these sports, in part because of the RPI, which some people think aids the Power 5, which a year from now we will be very thankful for.
Ain't that the truth? All right. So, hey, you got all 3 this weekend, right?
All 3 ESPN Plus. I'll be with Francesca and have big crowds expected. Could be record crowds. Alumni Day will be on Saturday. Mackenzie Audis, who was just inducted to the UCF Hall of Fame, will throw out the ceremonial first pitch. And like I said, this is the final conference series ever between these two teams, the final weekend. We don't know what that non-conference schedule will look like. Could be a midweek, could be in a tournament. We don't know. So enjoy while you can on that situation there. So we'll see what happens. I think these two teams will continue to play. I think baseball will continue to play. Drew, do you have any thoughts? Because I'm actually working on this, and you can chime in on this. I'm breaking down the 8 sports, the major 8 sports, and whether each should play or not. I have 4 sports that I think should still play. I have 4 sports that I don't think really matters if they play. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think ultimately they're all going to, outside of football, they're all going to still do it. It's a cheap game. It fills the schedule, the non-conference schedule. I look when UCF was an Atlantic Sun /CUSA and USF was CUSA/Big East. They played each other every year, for the most part. They still got it. It's good. It's good schedule filler. Obviously, you're not going to have, maybe for a baseball standpoint, maybe a midweek game at that point. But I mean, it's filler. UCF still plays Stetson in baseball. It's filler. That's what it's going to be.
Remember when that used to be a rivalry?
Oh, it used to be a big rivalry. I mean,
people are nervous, we're going to lose our rivalry. I mean,
rivalries get built up over time. They come, they go dormant. And then they can come back. What was it? Wichita State and I think it was Tulsa or something like that used to play each other all the time before, and then it went dormant. Now they became conference mates. They start playing again. That's just how rivalries work. I mean, it's the hate kind of is deep seated. It's there, and then it's the role of the previous generation to make sure that the new guys know about the hate.
It helps too that if there's high stakes in the games, like where I disagree with you. I don't think basketball will play every year because I don't think it benefits either side. There haven't been any relevant games.
My dog is objecting.
Yeah, I agree with your dog.
Thinks you're full of it.
I agree with your dog. What's your dog's name?
sucks and that we shouldn't play him in anything.
All right, nobody has better cameos.
Oh,
than
hell
you.
no.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, listen, I've been on the record about this. I'm a sucker for nostalgia. It's funny how we talk about this in nostalgia when we used to talk about, when we play them in the future, like, we're going to, it's going to be fun. And now we're talking about them playing them in the past tense. I mean, there's just so much other stuff that's outside of what has happened on the field of play between these two programs that, I'm sorry, you're not going to see people like whenever they see a Oklahoma State Tervis tumbler turn it upside down at Target. They're not going to do that. And I'm sorry, you're just not going.
But people move on, but people they'll adjust.
We'll never move on from this.
Sure, they are. We moved on from Stetson. People moved on from Rollins. There's always it's the same. It's the same.
The political aspect of this is something that I think our fan base will never truly move on.
I think half have already moved on.
Well, here's the other thing. These two schools
in some
compete with each other outside of sports. They compete for state resources.
They compete for students.
They're competing for students. I mean, it's no secret that Judy tried to prevent UCF from getting to med school. She actively tried.
She did the shaft, and now she's getting shafted. What are you going to do? But
yeah,
what are you going to do? But here's the thing. I agree with. I think in some sports they'll continue to play, but it has to benefit you to play them too. Like there's certain sports that they don't benefit by playing them. Like it doesn't help your resume. We've talked about the football side. Football has 9 conference games now. You only have 3 non-conference games.
It doesn't help to play them in football. It
does not help you. I would argue it doesn't help in volleyball. Volleyball is USF's not been any good at all.
They've been
That's
bad
not a rivalry. I think UCF's. In fact, I'll write about this. UCF, I think, has a better rivalry with Miami and FSU in volleyball. They played in the NCAA tournament. They played in some classic 5-setters. There's none of that at USF. Now, other sports like softball, I think baseball's gotten in the last handful of years has picked up. Soccer, the 2 soccer programs. I think there's definitely reason to play there. I think it benefits all parties. But other sports, I don't think that's the case. In that regard. So I think it's a sport by sport.
And I think the 2 basketballs kind of cancel each other out.
I mean,
you have the disparity in the men's with USF men's. Just even though they won the season series. Just as a whole, their program has just been down for.
But the last 2 years proved why in men's basketball, I don't think it benefits them to play because by playing them, they cost themselves.
Well, you play to win the game. And
but you didn't benefit. Like if you win that
they didn't
game,
have an option though. That's the other.
No, but that's my point. My point is,
it's not about playing benefit. It's the fact that you play the game, you lost, and not only did you lose, but you looked terrible doing it.
Right.
You deserve to lose that game at that point.
Correct. But if they win that game, it's like, well, you're supposed to win that game. So there's no benefit from it.
Well, the benefit would have been, helping them.
And again, if South Florida was a top 50 net team in basketball, I would agree with you. But they're not. They're consistently in the hundreds. So there's no benefit of playing that game.
Well, then look at UCF side. If UCF was in the hundreds, why would USF in a top 50?
Well, look, I think that's
basketball.
That could be Jose Fernandez's argument on the women's side. If UCF women's basketball, now the good news is with these sports, unlike football, it's year to year, so this could change in a couple of years.
And these games are cheap. Especially for South Florida, who's not going to be rolling in any amount of money. This is an inexpensive game to help build the schedule.
For them, they have more motivation. But again,
even UCF can use that help. It's going to take a while before their finances.
If it doesn't, I think these coaches. Right, but again, if this doesn't help your resume, you're not going to play it. If you have nothing to gain from it, you got the other team has to. Both teams have to be good.
I would flip it on the other end, especially on women's basketball. If you're Satia Messer, why would you play a non-power conference team like South Florida when you're playing a Big 12 slate to begin with?
Agreed. Who can beat you, by the way? Who can beat you, by the way, and beat you back? Like
you can't. It's like you were saying. You can't win, right?
Well,
because if you win, you're supposed to. If you lose, you lost to an inferior program.
Well, here's the truth.
Based purely on conference stature, obviously.
Based on conference, in reality, let's not mince any words. UCF's women's basketball is the inferior program here.
Jose's done a heck of a job.
Fernandez has done an amazing job, really solidifying that program. But again, you want to be the best. You have to beat the best. And you know what? They're the better program, and we know it. So,
but you got to build your program up. So I think you're gonna make this adjustment to the Big 12. The last thing you need is you're gonna play another team that's gonna beat your brain. You got to build your team up. And again, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they shouldn't play, but it has to benefit all parties, because USF's not just gonna say, "Hey, we're gonna come to Orlando and play a one-off." They're gonna want you to come to your place as well. So it's got to be.
They'll do a 2-season series.
Right, but how does that benefit a UCF team if the USF team is in the hundreds or vice versa? It's got to matter. The beauty of soccer, for example, both soccer programs are good. So you're going to benefit from playing that game. Softball, both teams are usually good. You're going to benefit from that standpoint. That hasn't been the case in other sports. So I think it's a sport to sport.
Programs change.
And that's why I'm saying that it's a year-to-year thing. And that's the beauty of the other sports, unlike football, is you don't have to schedule 5 years out, 10 years out. You could do year by year.
That's the only sport that you're really stuck. But you get 2 years. Like UCF Miami is going to have, from what I heard, they're going to have a home and home coming up, or at least it's some sort of series in basketball. So there's something going on there. So
and that's a positive. I think that's a positive, and I think that benefits you more playing Miami than playing USF in basketball as of now. Could that change in 2-3 years? Maybe it can, and then you can revisit it. But I don't think you should be married to it just because of geography, because some of these matchups and some of these sports are not legitimate rivals. They're not.
They can go play UNF instead.
UNF. I know my wife would be happy. She's a UNF graduate. So, all right. So, all right. Well, I'm looking forward to that column, Eric. I'm interested to see. Maybe we should do a poll. Like which sports, go sport by sport. Would you like to play USF in this sport going forward?
We could clue that.
Yes,
include that in the article. You could be co-writer.
I'm in.
We'll
make this.
There you go. All right. You can pop into.
All right. We got to move over to tennis and golf real quick. And I want to start with golf because the women's golf team is actually playing right now. They are in the American Championships in Brooksville, Southern Hills Golf Club. Today is the final round. UCF, at the second we are recording this, Wednesday about mid-afternoon, 12:30 in the afternoon, UCF is third in the American Athletic Conference Championships. They are on holes 9 through 12. SMU and Tulsa are the top two teams right now. SMU's leading at 18 under par combined. Tulsa 7 strokes behind him at -11. UCF at -9. But remember, this is all cumulative. And this can change pretty quickly. Right now, through the first 9 to 12 holes, UCF is -4 on the day. SMU, Tulsa, -7, -6 on the day. They can come back to the field. That's the team standings, at least as of right now. Player leaderboard, at the moment, Michelle Zhang of SMU is leading by 5 strokes. Top UCF night right now, Jess Baker is -6, -3 on the day. And who else do we have? Oh, Anna Nordfors is tied for 5th. Pat Pidden is tied for 7th. So three UCF nights in the top 10 right now in the women's golf championships. We'll be keeping an eye on that, as Bryson Turner, of course, will be monitoring that as well.
Women's golf always should be in the NCAAs regardless.
Yeah, they're ranked, according to the golf stat, they're ranked, I had it up here a second ago, they were top 30. Yeah, top 20, 19th. So
they'll be in the NCAAs regardless. But we'll see what happens.
Men's golf starts on Friday. And lo and behold, there he is right now. Bryson Turner is popping into the Night Shift podcast.
See, they started talking golf. He pops in.
Just finished the women's golf thing, and obviously they're playing right now. But Bryson, I wanted to get your take on men's golf right now, because they're playing at Pelican Golf Club in Bel Air. That starts on Friday. What's the plan right now with men's golf? Because what do they have to do, in your opinion, to get themselves in? Do they have to win this tournament right now? Like, what's the outlook right now for men's golf?
Well, they're in the same kind of position where they were last season. They're currently ranked 71 in the golf stat standings, which is, if not at the bubble, it's below the bubble of being selected for the NCAA regional. Now, a good showing in last year's AAC tournament is what ended up saving them and being one of the last teams in to the tournament last season. So I think we basically have to see what happened last season over again. I think that you definitely want to keep an eye on Luis Carrera. He's been having a very good season. I think a great performance out of him is going to have to be a requirement for this to work out. Johnny Travale has been pretty consistent throughout his career. He's been a little down sometimes this season, but I think that him doing well would also be a priority to have. I think if those two do a very good job, then it'll certainly help them. But considering that they were in the same position they were last year, this is like do or die. And even if they do the do, then it still might not be enough. So really, the best thing to do is just sit back and do the best you can, and then let the committee do the rest.
Do the do. Are you getting an NIL deal from Mountain Dew, Bryson? What are we talking about here? All right. I want to talk about tennis real quick because their championship, the country, this is Country Club Sports Championship Week. All right. We talked about golf. Now we talk about tennis. Right now, both tennis championships will be held at the USTA Tennis Center. UCF, I want to start with the men's tennis championships because UCF right now is the number 3 seed. They're playing South Florida on Friday at noon. The number 1 seed is Memphis. They play at 9 a.m. The number 2 is Tulane. They play at noon across from UCF in South Florida. So they'll get this thing moving pretty quick. But that side of the bracket has UCF, USF, and then the winner of that plays the winner of Tulane and Wichita State. What's the story right now with men's tennis, Bryson? Because, again, they come in under 500 overall, but the ITA tennis rankings, I want to pull them up here real quick and see what we have on the latest, which came out just the other day, April the 18th. UCF right now, let's see. I haven't even found them.
48.
There they are, 48. So are they? I feel like that's the bubble too, right?
Yes. So basically, there's actually if you watch the interview, the post-match interview that I did with John Roddick on the Black and Gold Banner YouTube channel, bing, after they defeated Tulsa. Well, Kyle's not here. So
No. Wait, we have a thing for this. Ready? There, go.
Hey, okay. So nice. I love it. So
Oh God, I got to stop it now. Oh Christ. Okay, go ahead.
So Coach Roddick basically said that there's actually a rule that the men's tennis tournament has where you have to be above 500 in order to be selected for the NCAA tournament. Now, they're currently...
Wait, you have to be at 500 or above 500?
At 500 from what I
At 500, okay.
So... Yes. So now Roddick, I guess, seemingly doesn't, according to the interview, I don't think that's a very popular rule, but it's the rule. So going into this tournament, 10-11, if they win their first matchup, then they're at 500. They don't have to worry about that. That's actually one of the reasons why they so quickly scheduled that away matchup at UAB, because they needed to make sure that they were in prime position to get at 500 with a win in the conference tournament. Now, one big thing that this team managed to do is I am astounded by the fact that they have grown as much as they have this season, because they started this season at like 1-6, and now they ended winning 6 of their last 7, which is, considering how dominated by young freshmen this team has, and I've been saying that all season, it's been astounding at how much these freshmen have progressed, because they've lost to Tulsa 4-1 back in ITA kickoff weekend, and now they've beaten them. Granted, it's at their own home turf, on their home court, but they've beaten them. Bogdan Pavel beat the number 51 ranked player in the country, 7-6, 7-6. That was a marathon of a matchup to watch right there. So the way that I see it is that they need to have a good showing. I would say they just need to make sure they have a good showing this tournament. You need to win. You need to win once to get to 500, And then considering how on the bubble they are with the ITA rankings, I would say you maybe win one more, win one more, even two more, just to be safe. But regardless of what happens here, the fact that they even have a shot at the NCAA tournament with how young this team is a victory, and I think a very, very good sign that there's a very strong core here when they move on to the Big 12. I think Roddick even said this is the first day they controlled their own destiny the entire season, and the fact that they got to this point is remarkable.
Yeah. On the women's side, the UCF women's team is the number 2 seed. They play the winner of Houston and ECU ostensibly tomorrow. That would be Thursday. Number 1 seed is SMU. They play Temple. This tournament's actually already underway. The first round, UCF was one of the top 5 teams get a bye in this. So, but what's the plan on the women's side too, though, Bryson? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're coming in at 9-10 themselves, at least as of right now.
Well, the women's team has unfortunately come in in a very unlucky position because they have been really going through it with injuries in the past. I would say in the past month, they've lost like Marie Mattel had some slight had a retirement. Stephanie Webb and Jay Tilburger have been out for a good amount of time. And so on the Black and Gold Banner at YouTube channel, in my interview with Brian Kanyeko, he mentioned that he hopes to have them back for conference championships. So we will see if they will make an appearance. Having them back would certainly be better than not having them. However, in their place, Anik Kattenberg, redshirt sophomore, has really stepped up. She's gone 4-1 in singles matches in place of one of those players' spots in her time. And she rolled her ankle back in early 2021 against FIU, and she hasn't seen a lot of court time since then. So honestly, I would say a very nice story of Anik Kattenberg stepping up to fill in. But of course, that also means that players that would normally be playing in a court 6, court 5 type of scenario are now playing in a court 3, court 4 scenario. And so that's not the assignment that they've been used to all season, which means they're in a more vulnerable position to lose, which some of them did, which is why they lost to SMU. Now, granted, there was a path to victory during that matchup. There were Anik Kattenberg and Sophia Biole picking up wins, got them in a position where if certain dominoes fell right, they were able to win. So I'm not going to rule this team out just yet. I really think it's going to depend on if Stephanie Webb and Jay Tilburger come back healthy and ready to perform. And even then, the fact that Anik Kattenberg has been stepping up the way that she has, I think that they just need to be able to get themselves in a prime position to win in order to have a solid showing in this tournament. This is also a scenario where they need to do well in order to be selected as an at-large in the conference tournament. I think because since the injury issues have happened, they've slid in the ITA rankings. So this is one where they also need to have a very good showing to get selected and get to the 500 rule, the same thing as the men.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on what you're saying. It seems to me like they have a tougher hill to climb because of those injuries. Even though they're 37, they're still at 9-10. You got to win at least 2, right? So at least one, but to get to 500. But I would say the more wins that you have, the better, because you really don't want to leave these things up to chance. You want to have things as much as in control as possible with these with these country club sports. You want to be as much in your own control of your own destiny as possible. You really don't want to leave it up to the committee if you can help it. Exactly. No, that's a great point. Wow. So a little drama this weekend coming in for UCF tennis and UCF golf as they approach as they try to claw their way into the NCAAs, and you never know. But it's not just win; you got to get above 500. So, all right. So that brings us over to Nick Porcelli, who is joining us. Nick, we've got a couple things we wanted to talk about, and you've got a article that is later today is about to go up on blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, finally it worked. On XFL and USFLs, because USFL started, but what really hurts is, and I want to lead with this, is the sad news on Marlon Williams, which just incredibly stinks. In their opener against the New Jersey Generals, Marlon blew out his ACL, or not his ACL, blew out his Achilles tendon. And I wanted to actually pull up the Marlon here, talking to Brock Heward after the injury happened. And you can just hear the sadness from Marlon, because I think he was poised for a real breakout year in the USFL, possibly getting himself into some NFL camps. And this happens. This is Marlon Williams after his injury against the New Jersey Generals earlier this week on Fox's coverage of the USFL.
Yeah, I walked by you, Marlon, and tears in your eyes right now. I saw you come off the field and scream, and you knew right away. How do you process this?
God give his toughest soldiers the toughest battle, so, got to look ahead, see what's going ahead of me, and, just long road to recovery, but I'll be back.
And yet I see you continue to encourage your teammates and the other receivers. How?
I'm a team player. These guys put in work just like me, so if I'm not out there on the field, I hope they out there flourishing, doing the best that they can too. Because if I was on the field, I want them to do the same thing. So nothing don't change. I'll be all right.
Joe Klatt said, I don't think we always understand the orbit of people, agent, family, friends, everybody. I've seen you on your phone, how it affects them as well.
It's a tough one for them. They know how much I love this, but we'll be all right. We're going to get through it.
Thank you, Marlon.
That hurts to watch as much as you can imagine, because like Marlon, like we were saying, Nick, we thought that of all the UCF players who are in these spring leagues, felt like he was the one who was could have been the biggest star, and now he has to deal with this.
Yeah, I agree with that. Even the USFL kind of thought that, like, he was using a lot of the promotion,
Yeah.
Like, we saw all these posts of like, hey, who could win MVP? His name was brought up. Who are some of the notable guys on the Stallions? His name was brought up again. Like, that hurts. It hurts seeing any athlete go like that, especially, like something that can take away, their speed, like an Achilles injury. It's just, you heard it too in his voice. It's such a sad thing.
Yeah, that sucks. It just absolutely sucks. On the other hand, Cole Schneider did play for Birmingham, was active in that game. Neville Clark for New Orleans played or had 3 tackles and two passes defended against Pittsburgh in New Orleans' opener. Marcus Tatum also got some work for New Orleans. Big Cat Bryant was inactive for the Memphis Showboats opener. Around the XFL side, all right, so we're heading into the final weekend of the XFL regular season. Obviously, the Orlando Guardians are not going to make the playoffs, but Terrence Plummer has emerged as we head down the stretch as one of the top defensive players in the league. Right, Nick, 7th in the league with 51 total tackles.
Yeah, jumped up from 9th last week. We've said it before on the podcast. He's just very consistent in his performance. Like, if you look at a stat line, maybe there's not always like eye popping, but like they're always like very consistent in the amount of tackles that he gets, and just being there, watching him throughout the season. Like, you can tell he's like always, all around there making a play. So he's
just like he was here. He's just wherever the ball is, Terrence is not far behind. Yeah. Rennell Hall and the Arlington Renegades now. He had a couple catches and a couple key kickoff returns for Arlington in that game against DC. Is Arlington still eligible for the playoffs right now? It's because it's tight.
If the season ended today, they would be in the playoffs.
Okay.
But
it's coming down to this final weekend because they're in with San Antonio, I think, right?
Yeah, they're 4-5, but the next closest team, I believe, is Seattle, and they have one more loss than them.
Mm-hmm.
So for them next week, it really just is winning in.
All right. So chance to see possibly Rennell Hall in the XFL playoffs as we wrap this thing up. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this pretty much catches us up on all of everything, guys. So, hey, thanks to Nick. Thanks to Bryson. Appreciate you guys. It's Bryson Turner, Nick Porcelli 2 on Twitter. Also, thanks to Drew, Statboy Drew on Twitter, and Kyle at the SOTG for popping in and helping us out as well. And of course, Eric Lopez Elo. I think we got everything right. I think we nailed it. I mean, by the way, didn't have any break. Oh, Bryson brought up a good point. Quick note on track because they're in action this weekend too, right?
Yes, they are. They're going to be splitting up this week with the distance squad heading to Atlanta for the Georgia Tech Invitational, while the rest of the team will be at LSU for the LSU alumni goal event. But they're coming off of a weekend where Latasha Smith set a new program record for the outdoor 400-meter dash, becoming the first night to run a sub 52-second one. Kia Williams did that in the very next heat, and then both of them joined Renaya Jones and Deja Lampkin to set a new 4x400-meter relay record as well. And for an event that, by the way, a new NCAA record for the 400-meter dash was set at that event. So to see Latasha Smith and Kia Williams finish in the top 10 of that event, because the Tom Jones Memorial brings like a lot of the top track and field schools in the country there. So to see Latasha Smith and Kia Williams really hold their own there, it was a major factor. And Renaya Jones took gold in the 100-meter hurdles. There's a whole bunch of different stories from that tournament you can see on the Nightcap article that Nick contributed to with his midweek with a section on midweek baseball on the blackandgoldbanneret.com. So go ahead and head over there to see all of the results and different stories that came from the Tom Jones Memorial Invitational. Thank you, Jeff.
There you go. Now we're all caught up. Well, I think we got it now. So this is how busy it gets, man. Because obviously golf, tennis. We're going to be following women's golf. They're finishing up today in Brooksville. Keep an eye on that. Bryson's going to be obviously follow. It's Bryson Turner for all the latest, and of course, UCF Banner _SBN on Twitter for all the latest for us. Elo, you're going to be at softball. Big 6 games coming up, man. Here we go. It's going to be huge.
It's a big stretch. Obviously, UCF South Florida, final time in a weekend as conference rivals to play. Who knows when we'll see these teams play in a weekend or what the future holds. So definitely come out. Yeah. It should be an exciting atmosphere, major ramifications for the NCAA tournament and beyond. Should be a lot of fun there. You're looking forward to calling it with Francesca and Ea, and should be a great crowd from what I understand. So Alumni Day on Saturday. Baseball's over in Tampa. So yeah, it's kind of unique. This is it. This is the last 2 sports where they're scheduled to play as conference rivals. They could play again in the conference tournament, but as far as scheduled, this is it as far as on campus.
And a lot on the line. So this is going to be a dramatic week for all the spring sports, really, with tennis trying to claw back up into it, obviously golf in the tournaments, and baseball and softball trying to pull themselves back up the way up those conference standings as we head down the stretch against South Florida. So for all of us here at the Night Shift Podcast, we want to thank you so much for listening, and thanks again to everybody who helped us out over the spring game weekend. By the way, Justin Wilson and John Heisler were our MVPs for helping us get all set up with the credentials for baseball and for football to cover everything with JRP. That was an absolute blast. We want to thank them for everything that they've done, and thanks as well to everybody over at UCF for all their help in helping us cover a pretty historic moment. So, all right, that'll do it for us here on the Night Shift Podcast. For all of us here, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. Go Knights, charge on. Enjoy this dramatic week of UCF spring sports coming up. We will see you next week. Enjoy.